Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Paquette, and I am president and co-founder of the Stigma-Free Mental Health Society. I am so happy you decided to join us today. I am here with a wonderful human and individual, Charlotte Armstrong. Charlotte, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hey everyone, and thanks for having me today, Andrea.
No problem. Really happy to have you. So, at Stigma Free Mental Health, we are starting to focus a lot on caregivers. Caregivers are often gone unnoticed. They are the people that support their family, their friends, often their children. And we're going to talk about that today with Charlotte and about her organization that she co founded, All In Family. So, Charlotte, I'm just going to start off with a bio and then we'll get going with the questions. All right.
Sounds great.
Okay. Charlotte was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Charlotte, formerly Charlotte Sitnick, transitioned from a successful career in real estate to mental health advocacy. Her shift was inspired by her lived experience of supporting her child who was struggling with mental health issues. This journey led Charlotte to firmly believe that when one member of a family struggles, it impacts every member. She emphasizes the importance of each family member examining their role in the family's mental health story and advocates for everyone to work on themselves rather than placing the burden solely on the one who struggles the most. So, Charlotte, I feel that you are doing a lot of really amazing work. It seems like, from what we've become friends and what I know of you, you're very passionate about mental health issues, and it was born out of a personal story of your daughter. And I know you wanted to share a little bit about that experience and the impact on your family and such. So I thought I could talk about your caregiver journey. And I was hoping you can describe the emotional toll of being a caregiver for a child with mental illness. And how did that impact your own mental health and the well being of your family?
Great question, Andrea. And if you had asked me any questions about mental health or mental illness, and this is going back 15 or so years ago, I probably wouldn't have known how to answer it. And then,
Mhm.
my eldest, who I call my tester child, began to struggle with her mental health. And she went through this period where she was bullied, and she spent most of middle school and high school wanting off this planet.
Mhm.
And me, as her mom, was running around frantically trying to save her. And the one thing that I wish I had known then was, gosh, I wish I had taken better care of myself. But if you had asked me 15 or so years ago, how are you doing? I would have said, I'm good. I've got this. This isn't about me. This is about saving my child. But everything inside of me, my body was screaming, take better care. Anxiety ridden, upset stomach, all of those things I was ignoring just to stay focused on her.
Right. So completely not even paying attention to yourself, your own mental well-being. And then you said that this also affected your family. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so there's interesting pieces of that time in my life that I share with other family members that I'm supporting as they're supporting someone who's struggling with their mental health. My youngest, who I call tongue in cheek, the forgotten one, she was my child who got up every day, got dressed, made herself breakfast, and got herself to school. She did all her homework. She didn't want to add any more stress to our family because she was so watching all the stress that I was going caring for her sister. And so one of the things that both my girls, I'm happy to say, are in their 20s and doing really great with their mental health. But the youngest one, it really impacted her mental health. She was scared to share what was happening for her. She was terrified, what was happening with her sister, but she didn't open up. I tried several times to get her to go for some, counseling or, talk with somebody, and she was just not willing to open up and share because she didn't, like I say, want to add any more burden to my life.
Right. I know it is extremely difficult being when you love someone so deeply, you don't want to add to the distress that's happening in the home. And when really your second daughter, or you're the one who didn't have the mental illness issues, was doing it out of love too, right? Like, I don't want to add to this situation, but then she's silently suffering as well.
And it was funny, a number of years ago when she had gone off to university, I met with some of her friends and they said, is it true that your daughter never had a curfew or didn't get in trouble? And I thought I never gave her a curfew. She never got in trouble. And it's just like she always came home on time. She never did anything wrong because, like I said, she didn't want to add anything else on my plate. And so I tease her now. I'm like, okay, let's see what you can do now. Give me a little run for your money. But, it's tongue in cheek, of course.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know those intimate details of family and experience takes a lot of courage. So I really appreciate that. And I want to talk a little bit about navigating the system. So, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in navigating the healthcare system and finding appropriate support services for your child?
It's I work across Canada and I do some work in the United States, supporting families to advocate the best, level of care for their family members. And it's so frustrating because often the systems don't talk to each other. And so the first thing I always chat with families is, depending how old the person is that you're supporting, how often are you telling their story in front of them? So what do I mean by that? So when I was trying to find the right supports for my daughter, I took her to our family doctor and I told the story of her struggles to him. And then he suggested we talk to a clinician. And so then I told the story again to the clinician. And so each time my child was hearing that she's struggling, she's choosing some coping strategies at the time that I was labeling bad or scary. And she was starting to get this messaging that she was unfixable because we were going from person to person, from clinician to clinician. So the one thing I talk to families about is if you can write the story so that the child or the person that you're supporting isn't hearing it over and over again. Because what happens is they start to believe it to be truth, especially if you're going to multiple sources to try to find the right, treatment.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter started to believe that she was unfixable.
Mm.
And that had a huge impact on her. And I didn't see what I was doing at the time because I was just telling the story. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And so I encourage people to, if you can, drop off a letter beforehand for the doctor to read. Those kind of, things we suggest. The other difficulty is when there's substance use involved as well. And, mental health and substance use, whether it's, drugs or alcohol. And often you have to pick a lane. Are you going to go the substance use, maybe, the addiction route, looking at a treatment center, or is it the mental health? And what I found, because I do have experience in both, mental health and substance use really go hand in hand. And, for our story and my family's story, we really wanted to support her to find out what was happening inside of her. Mm-hmm. And support her to find different coping strategies. And that eventually she chose other coping strategies, other than some, interesting substance use ones that she chose at the time. And that was just a choice that we made as a family and we talked to each other. My daughter, her dad, we talked and really wanted to hear what she had to say. And for all of you who are supporting a teenager and you're saying, no, I have to make the decision, it's really hard to force somebody to make change if they don't believe that they have the power inside of them to do it. And so one of the biggest things that we did in our daughter's story, and I didn't do it off the bat, so I didn't start off this way, but we really started to hear what she wanted, hear what kind of support she wanted, and had the messaging to her that she had the power inside of her to make those changes that she needed to support her mental health.
Yeah.
Because the original me, I tried to bribe her to stop. I tried to will her to stop. I tried to pray her to stop. You know, I tried everything to get her to stop. And it wasn't until we started to have those messages that she had the power to do it, and we're here to support her, that we really saw the change happened. And the other
Amazing.
thing is, it doesn't happen and all of a sudden you're back to the way it was. There's lots of ups and downs. And I always like to say bumpy is good, because you are going to have these ups and downs. But I'd take bumpy over the alternative, which is she didn't want to be here. And so for me, those are the things that were important to me, because I do want a world where, you know, both my girls are living in it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very powerful, because we get that question at Stigma-Free, or even to me personally, what do I do if somebody doesn't want to get help? It's the most common question and the most difficult one to answer, but I really appreciate how you framed that, and that answer around they need to have agency or an inspiration in them to want to stop. But it's sad sometimes when I say that, because then people say, well, they don't, the end. But I think when you say, what can I do for you, to the person who is struggling, I often will tell people that to put the power into the hands of the person with the mental illness. And I love how you say, you know, you can't bribe them, you can't pray it away, all of these things, but it's really up to that person to be reinforced with the thoughts that they can do this and that they have the power within them. So I absolutely love that.
Oh, thanks, Andrea. And the other thing is, early on in our family story, if you asked me what recovery looked like, I would define what I thought recovery looked like for her. So I wanted her back in school. I wanted her back on the honor roll. I wanted her back dancing and being an artist. I wanted her back to that dream, you know, that I had for her. You know, I wanted her to have healthy coping strategies and get rid of her friends that I didn't approve of. Never once did I ask her what she thought of her recovery looked like. And I think that's where a lot of the conflict happens in families, is when you're not opening your ears to hear what they're wanting. And there's so many versions of what recovery looks like out there. It's not always about abstinence, you know, on the substance use side. And recovery can look different, you know, on the mental health side too. And I think as a parent, you know, or as a family member, caregiver, if you're closing your ears to only know of recovery the way you define it, you're neglecting an opportunity to have a conversation with the person to hear what they're thinking. So we talk a lot about plan Bs and all the options and things like that. So you can be more informed to make a choice based on what's going to work for you.
Yes, 100%. I think that's vital, important, and often forgotten. Yeah. So when it comes to self-care, what kind of self-care strategies did you implement eventually to maintain your own well-being while caring for your child?
Well, it was funny because, you know, the stubborn me was completely ignoring what was happening. And I would say to people, listen, I'm good, I'm fine, I do yoga. Like, I don't need any more self-care. And what was happening is, you know, migraines, and, you know, I had a clenched jaw and I had stomach issues. So body screaming, take better care of myself. And it wasn't until I started to really focus on me first, because I wanted to show up as a better version of me for the rest of my family. So that one with the stomach ache, the migraines, and, you know, the clenched jaw, was living in a reactive mode most of the time, very fear-based. So self-care for me was looking at what tools that I could do to support myself, so that I got a little bit more in my toolbox when life is difficult. But also when life is easier, that I'm not living in this fear base that, oh, it's just going to go back to that day, you know, 2 weeks ago when it was like so super scary.
Yeah.
And so it's exploring, you know, how I manage stress, how I what I do to, during stressful situations, and really starting to learn for me what that was like. So I know I'm sounding vague in what I'm saying, because it's an individual journey that you all have to look at to see what works for you. So it's not, getting your nails done and massages and things, but it's tuning in that when I start to get a little angry or a little short, those are times when I realize, oh, I need to do something to kind of ground me back. And so for me, I have a dog, and he and I walk an awful lot. And when I'm struggling or unfocused on him is when he tries to run away on me. It's like he knows. And then I got to focus back on him. So he's a great grounding tool for me, and stay focused, stay present, and support myself. But it was, if you had said this to me, 15 or so years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. But, like I said, everything inside of me was screaming, take better care of yourself. So what happened when I did this, I started to make choices that were more intentional around supports for myself and my family. Whereas the old me, who hadn't taken good care of myself, a lot of the decisions I made were reactive and weren't the best choices for my family or my daughter. And so I encourage all the families that I'm working with to start to take a look at themselves and what they can do to show up in a better way, like I said, to be a better version of themselves.
Yeah. No, I absolutely know what you're talking about from personal experience. And also I appreciate that viewpoint. And I love the part about your dog. I have like 3 dogs, and I know they're like a little therapy things, and I just absolutely love them. And I'm glad you found that strategy and that love with an animal, because I find that to be very helpful in a lot of ways with different situations too. Okay, now let's talk about All In Family. So what inspired you? Well, we know what inspired you with your daughter, but anything further to co-found All In Family? What was the driving force behind your decision to create this organization?
So my daughter found peer support, and it was a huge part of her recovery story. And so peer support is lived experience of someone with a mental health, and or addiction, supporting others. And so she found an organization that was supporting her. And she found like-minded people, and that she wasn't this oddity. And they compared coping strategies, and it was a safe place for her to talk about hard things. Mm. And what was missing would have been a family peer supporter there to work with me, someone else with that lived experience of what it's like to caregive, a loved one. And so I spoke with that organization. I said, what about the family? And they're like, what about the family? And that's where the All In was born. It's, we need our own supports. We need a place where we can go where we don't feel alone. I truly thought I was the only family that was going through something like this. And I didn't want to reach out because I didn't want to add more stigma to my daughter or our family. Because back then, that mental health, especially when there was an addiction component to it, it was a bit of a taboo. Like, I didn't want her to have that bad kid label. Mm-hmm. And so I went underground, and I met my co-founder, Kirsten. We were actually on the steps of the legislative building at a mental health rally, and we looked at each other, and we had a similar story, and we both went, you look kind of normal. And we started this conversation, and we became a support network for each other. So when life got hard, I would reach out to Kirsten, and vice versa. Because sometimes when you reach out to family or good friends and they're not going through something similar, they can give you a reaction that can add a little bit more stigma to your, already, maybe if you're wearing that bad mom label, or you're already thinking, oh, I can't get any worse. Whereas with other family members who are going through something similar, it's like this community of like-minded, caring people who are just saying, yeah, me too, or I had something similar that happened. And so All In is a nonprofit, and it's an online platform where we get together in support groups or one-on-one, and we support each other through sharing of resources, sharing of books we're reading, or strategies. It's really geared to the caregiver side. And what I like to say is, family to us at All In is whatever family is to you. So traditional family, best friend, coworker, like whatever. If you identify as that, you're more than welcome to come. And so we've been, we have several family peer supporters that volunteer their time and give back, and we do webinars, and like I said, we do one-on-ones, and our groups run every week online on Zoom, and anyone can come. It's kind of like everything that was missing in our story.
Yeah, definitely. No, I love that because you're making such a difference in the lives of other caregivers now, and you had to go through that difficult time in order to realize what you needed. And then meeting Kirsten was such a godsend. And now you have this amazing organization that provides those resources, webinars, as you mentioned, and people sharing their personal stories. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I couldn't be more proud of the organization.
Yeah, I'm proud of it too, definitely. Okay. So for your future vision of All In Family's future, what goals do you hope to achieve in the next 5 years or so?
One of the things that we've found is people really want more downloadables, more tangibles. So 2 in the morning when you can't sleep, something you can go to and watch. So we're really focusing on a lot more of those kind of things. We're going to keep the groups running, and we're going to keep the one-on-one, but it just seems that families are asking for more of that. And they're also asking for more like strategies. So, webinars around, like I just did one on caregivers' stresses around the holidays. So they wanted some coping strategies of how to better prepare for navigating the holidays, because there's stresses without a mental health issue, and then for some, adding that mental health issue can be a real struggle. And so that came up, and we created a webinar around that. And so we really listen to what families are asking for and deliver on that.
Well, that is perfect that you're hearing what is needed and providing something very valuable. And so, lastly, a message to caregivers. What message would you like to share with other caregivers who may be feeling overwhelmed or alone?
Well, one of the things I always talk about is your life matters too. And that was a hard one for me to hear 15 years ago, but it was one that resonated with me. And when I started to take better care of myself, that's when the change happened in my family, because I'm the only one that I can only change myself. I can't change everybody else. And when my daughter saw that I was working on myself, and that I was able to, hold space for her and support her on the journey, that's when my family's mental health journey started to change. And I'm not saying I controlled the entire change, but I could control what I did. And that had a huge impact on where my family is today.
Modeling good mental health, right?
Modeling good mental health, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte, for this very insightful, positive, and amazing conversation today. And do you have any last words you'd like to share at all?
Well, it's always an honor and privilege to hang out with you, Andrea. You and I share so many of the same visions in what we want for this world. In regards to mental health and family and substance use and all of those things. But my final thoughts are reach out, keep checking, look to see what resources you're needing. And I know you're saying I've been doing that, but eventually you're going to find it, and then you're going to find what works for you. And life is amazing once you figure it out. I'm smiling right now because my daughter is living in wellness as defined by her. And I truly didn't think she'd make it through her teenage years. She's married. My youngest is thriving. She's in university. And, I got a great husband, and it's just it. And I wouldn't have believed you 15 years ago that it would be like this.
Yeah, because I know personally, when you're in that hole, that depression, that blackness, you can't see out and you don't think anything's going to change, right?
No, and you're so right. And that's where that community was such an important piece, in my story. It was once I found it, I grabbed onto it, and it was a game changer.
100%. Where can people find you, Charlotte?
allinfamily.ca.
All right, that's easy and perfect. And any other resources you want to highlight at all?
Come to All In Family and you'll see some resources there. We've got some listed. You can also reach out to me, and there are some amazing resources. They're just a little hard to navigate, especially in Canada, but we do have a way of finding them, and so reach out. And thanks, Andrea, for everything you do. I know you've got some resources coming up on your website as well.
Yeah, we definitely have some now, and then we're going to be creating much more. So if you come to studentmentalhealthtoolkit.com, everybody, there's a parents, guardians, and caregivers section, which we have enhanced greatly, and we're going to do so much more work around it. We're very proud of it. And also a big thank you to Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation for supporting the Stigma-Free Mental Health Society. We are truly grateful. And it's nice to see a donor like this specifically dedicated to caregivers. As I said before, a lot of times caregivers are overlooked. And here at Stigma-Free and All In Family, we want to make sure that we're here to be of service to you and to help you get through the hardest of struggles. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Charlotte. And everyone, have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye now.